Hello and welcome to the Business of Storytelling from Moore's Law Media in association with Vimeo, the platform to make, manage and share amazing videos from vimeo.com. My name is Neil Moore. My job here is to talk less and listen more to my guests who are expert storytellers, content creators, commissioners who are going to tell us about how they do what they do so well so that we can get better at it too. And today I'm joined by the head of customer advocacy, which is a new job title for us on this podcast, from Workday. He looks after APJ. I'm assuming that's Asia Pacific and Japan.
Yes.
Glenn, thank you for
Hi.
coming.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
First question is, like I said, it's an unusual job title for me to talk to. So tell me about this role and tell me about the organization you do it for, because I'm not sure everybody will be familiar with Workday. It's a B2B organization. I know it, but you explain it in your own words.
Sure. Workday is an enterprise software company based in the US who sells HR, finance, and planning solutions to enterprises. And my role is a very unique role, and it's a very niche role in the market. Customer advocacy is something that's been growing in the last few years, I would say. And it's solely focused on getting deep into the customers and getting those stories out and making sure that, buyers who are considering our solutions find relevant information through the customer stories that we bring out in the market.
Great. So my next question is, why is storytelling important to you and your role in your organization? So you gave us a hint there. So you're telling customer stories for the benefit of new customers. So what kinds of stories would they be?
Great question. So again, I mentioned customer stories is the bread and butter of my team. I think right now when we ask the question, like, who are the best marketers in an organization, it's not someone who's sitting in the marketing team.
Right.
It's actually the customers, right? So I think we've seen some statistics, like 90% of buyers who have probably read or watched a video of success stories from customers end up getting their decisions influenced. So that shows you how vital customer advocacy is and customer storytelling is right now. I would say from enterprise perspective, where a lot of focus and a lot of emails that people get from these companies are all about their products, different suites of applications, and sometimes it can be too bombarding. Customer stories humanize the brand. It humanizes the way we approach the buyers. It tells you a different way of how you want to buy our products through our customers. Let us tell you what are the impacts that our customers have enjoyed, or some of the things that have great results that they've seen in their organizations through our products. So it's telling a different dimension of the business.
Brilliant. I love it. I get the concept. We're going to use our customers as our best advocates. Makes perfect sense. It's in the job title. How do you find the customers with the good stories to tell, and how do you convince them to tell them for you?
Oh, there's a lot of we can do the easy thing of narrowing down who are the big brands. That's usually what a typical marketing person does. But for me, what I tell my team is try to meet as many customers as you can, whether it's through an event, whether through a company visit, a user group, and just chat with them. Try to find out how they've been using the product, how they've been, what are some challenges maybe, you want to know about them. And then at some point, you'll find some hints and nuggets of things that you normally wouldn't hear on a day-to-day basis. And you have to be diverse with the customers that you talk to, right? You can't be selective with, the biggest brands for sure will have the great stories. No. You will find it in those rare instances through conversations. And that's the exercise I always wanted to get my team to do. You'll find those hidden nuggets. You'll find that is something interesting. That is something unique that I've never seen published. So would you be, and then we will ask the customer, would you be willing to share that more and talk about more and happy to explore more with you on that. So that's one of the things that I always want my team to do. Of course, research helps a lot. If you're looking at something very specific to an industry or a specific persona. You want to look at who had been talking about these specific stories that you want to bring out. And sometimes what I do is social media listening. You see who are the people who are talking about these topics already. I'll give you an example, ANML. All right, when they came to us, to my team, and say, do you know which customers are talking about ANML? There's no filter button in that. How would I know, right? So I was like, let me go in on social media and go in LinkedIn and say who has been talking about ANML, and we can start from there, and then that helps you filter and narrow down, and then you go to the necessary stakeholders who have the relationship with customers, and then we start the conversations on potential story making.
Two questions about that.
Yeah.
One, I love the approach. I love the journalistic approach of actually talking to people rather than just sort of looking at stats. I have a particular bias towards taking that very, very human approach, that qualitative approach.
Yeah.
When your guys are out there talking to customers, how do they know how to identify a good story? Do they have any sort of training? Do you have any sort of editorial guidelines that they can, that's interesting, I've not heard that before. How do they know what's a good story?
I think based on experience, if you've been in the business for a long time, you probably have seen what are the usual stories that have come out already. So through these conversations, you would know which ones are unique, which ones we haven't published, which ones are unique from an industry perspective. Like, I've never heard this being talked from a financial industry. You seem to be more bolder than more financial services companies, right? So that's what we get. But most of the time, when they start telling you personal experiences, they tell you they tell you stories that that just evoke something or compels you to like listen more, and then that's when this is something personal. There's more to this that she's sharing, and there's more here that I can draw out and make it into a great story. So I think once it touches your emotion, then that's when I know that it's a story. One thing too is when working with different stories, how we would know that it's a great story is if I remove our brand, like Workday and the solutions, and just let the story be on its own, will it still stand and be a very attractive story? If the answer is yes, you got yourself a great story.
My second question is not really a question, but a comment, which is, you're right. The instinct often of a marketer is to go for the biggest brand, the biggest customer, or the biggest data set, or whatever, to tell the story. The problem with that is often layers and layers of PR and legal and permission and approval and wrangling and all that, and it can take forever and ever and ever. So might that be one of the reasons that you are not wholly biased towards the big customers? You're happy to feature the smaller customers and the individuals as well?
Exactly. That's really the point. And again, stories are not solely tied to a brand. Everyone has their own story. Everyone has their own journey. Everyone has their own transformation within their company, and everyone starts somewhere. And it's up to you to unravel and see whether you can get that, and if you find something interesting in that, if you are good for you. If not, then you continue to look for the great stories, right? If you happen to get a big brand and it all the pieces fall into your place, then you're the luckiest guy.
Yeah. Well, I find the harder I work, the luckier I get, right? The more people you talk to, the more chances you've got of turning up a decent story.
Yep.
My next question is normally, how do you know what will make a great story? And I love the point you made about when it gets beyond purely the corporate and we get some personal, how it sort of personally impacted them or affected them or whatever. Is there any other elements to you that make a great story that would make you go, yeah, that's one for us?
If you find anything that's beyond the normal formula, right? When we create stories, customer stories, in my perspective, for our enterprise, you typically have this formula of find a challenge or the problem, find a solution, and what's the results.
Yep.
That was a typical formula, and we keep
I've done
sticking
it myself
to that
many times.
And a lot of times you've seen that in all stories that you read, right?
Yep.
So I think one of the elements is if you go beyond that formula and try to explore anything else out from that person that you're interviewing, like what is the purpose? You start with the purpose of why you even do this transformation. And if you can tie it in nicely and you focus on the hardware, right? Everyone's talking about hardware nowadays.
It's the first I've heard of it,
Oh,
but I
really?
like it. I'm going to take it. I'm going to hashtag it. I'm going to use it.
If you want to focus on the hardware of the story rather than the hardware, then you know you'll get a great story. And that's, I think, one of the elements that we keep on looking for when we make great stories with our customers.
But obviously, traditionally, the way one sells software is it's very feature heavy. It's how many functions and features it's got.
Correct.
So how do you balance that? How are you getting that across as well? Or does it not matter? Is the way you get people in is just, it made my life easier, and the audience is like, I don't care how, I just want an easier life.
Well, it depends on the channel that you're working on for your story, right? When you typically focus on a video and it's a 2 to 3 minute video, you can't just be talking 2 minutes about a product. It will come up there at some point, but you have to catch the audience. You have to get the audience to learn more, and that's where those stories that compels you, and you focus more on those personal and hardware stories, that's them to learn more, and they could always listen to or get a white paper about the product after, right? As long as you've got their attention already through your stories, then everything will follow.
So you package the features up in a nice human, emotional, soft and fuzzy package.
Yes.
Very nice, very nice. I see what you did there. So what's the, let's say you've gone out, you've spoken to, loads of customers, you or one of your guys has come to you and said, I've got a great story, it's really going to work for us. What happens next? How do you decide how to tell that story? How do you go about getting permission? Who do you work with? What's the process you go through?
Yeah, first and foremost, when you get a customer, we try to explore and even think in our head already, what are sort of the narrative that we can think of within this customer from an industry perspective, from a persona perspective. And then from my personal experience, I have a very lean team, so we don't have an in-house team, so we work with agencies. So I've worked with Click2View for the longest time that I've been with my job. And what I do with my agency is we sit down and we say, this is the goal. This is the goal that we want and why we brought this customer, and we talk about it. And these are the channels available, and so far they've said yes to, let's say, a video, right? And then we plan on the questions that we want. We ensure that it hits all the themes that we want, the goals that we want, and on top of that, you want to preempt already. Are there any other things that you can work with this single production? Because as you know nowadays, a production can be costly. You want to be more efficient when you think about creating a production. You want to have more legs with any content that you create. So thinking about that and working with a trusted agency on what are the possible content that you can create with a single production really helps and makes it more guided. And then of course then you work on your interviews, and then we plan the actual date for the content. It could be a written interview or a video. And then when we get the transcripts after, or interview transcripts, then I try to really read and evaluate, can this be repurposed in any other way? Because I can't just be paying $10K for one video, right? So I'll
Who can these days, right?
Yeah, I can. So I'll be reading, this is sufficient enough because the interview went so deep, I could make this into possibly a written case study. And I'm like, she has great analogies, and she has great, powerful quotes that she brought into that story. This could be great for social media, right? Because there's as you notice, there's a lot of avenues right now to catch attention for customers. So thinking about that and thinking ahead of possible ways for your content really helps, rather than be caught off guard and say, I just missed that opportunity of creating more content with what I just did. So that's the typical process we typically do with our customers when creating a story.
It's nice to see you have such a collaborative relationship with your agency there.
Yeah.
Is there a criteria for what story gets to be a video, a visual story? Is it based on the ROI, or how beautiful it's going to be, or how interesting the character is, or why something might be written, or another format? How do you make that decision?
Well, it depends. So, to be honest, it depends on what's the need of the company and how mature the company is. I'll tell you, when I first started, and 5 years ago, there was probably just a few customers in Asia Pacific, Japan when we started, and any customer is any customer that tells us something visually on a video helps with the brand awareness. It helps us with getting the word out of the company. So we are not picky. If they're happy to do a video, let's do it.
Yeah, you got something nice to say? We'll put
We'll,
it out.
we'll do it, right? If you're happy for us, of course, if there's budget as well, right?
Of course.
But eventually, as the company matures and there's specific demands in terms of, which ones would work better in a video and which ones would work. It depends also on the interviewee, right? You need to have an interviewee who is compelling enough, and you'll learn more when you do your initial onboarding with an interviewee or initial discussions with an interviewee, whether they are even confident enough to do in a video. Of course, big brands would help. But for me, I would say those that have those that when they are very compelling when they talk, right, would warrant a video. I would say I would definitely, whether you're a smaller company, but when I talk to you and when just by listening to you, you've drawn me in. You were able to convince me in your story alone. Whatever your company is, I'll put you in a video if you're happy to, right?
You sounded like a studio boss. I'll make you a star, kid. You know?
Yeah, and most of the time for case studies, what people who are perfect for that are those who are like not confident on camera, but are very experts in the product and can really deep more into the metrics and the data that you need, when you look for those in the stories. That would essentially go for like written case studies and stuff.
I know that you're also a Pride Global Liaison for Workday as well. So to what extent do you look for diverse stories, and how conscious are you of that?
Oh, that is important for me, and it even not for just the customers I'm looking, even with the agency that I'm looking for. And when I work with agencies, I always stress that, because that's how we can be more proactive in promoting a really diverse, workforce, and really even with the third-party suppliers that you work with. So whenever I'm in an agency and I say, oh, this is all guys, can we request for a balance of workforce in here? And they respectfully accept my suggestions, because that's always important to me. And again, diversity is not just because it's a thing, but you get a lot of different perspectives and different stories through diversity, right? And that's how you get it fuels innovation. So I'm all for it. I'm always happy to get a lot of diverse, and the more diverse footage, the more diverse interviewees and customers I can get, the more happy I am.
I think a lot of the early stages of the discussion on diversity, equity, and inclusion came from the West, came from America.
Yeah.
Our region, America is one country, it's 50 states, they are diverse, but nothing compared to the diversity that we've got in our part of the world here. And we have cultural sensitivities in different countries.
Yep.
To what extent, on a mission, like you, I want to be diverse, I want to present diverse perspectives, but also there are certain cultural sensitivities. How do you get that balance right? Because you do have to work within countries that have their own rules and regulations.
I feel privileged that the company that I'm with is Workday, who on its own already is a very different, and it's breaking molds, and is really putting stamp that we are this type of company, and we work with HR, right? And we've seen a lot of our customers already making changes in their conservatism through our products, right? When do you include a non-gender or a non-binary gender form in your onboarding or in your recruiting process? Now you can do it. So I'm privileged that I get that safe space to do it in my work. Of course, there's always that sensitivity in terms of how you use inclusive language when you talk to customers, and that's when you explore, oh, I'm safe because this has been reciprocated. If I see a obstacle in there or a resistance, and of course I'll be very respectful, but I would still try, right? You'll never know unless you try, and if you give in right away, then progress will never happen.
I appreciate that balanced and nuanced view, and also I appreciate it coming from someone who is Asian born and bred in Asia, I sometimes feel that a pressure that comes down from maybe slightly more liberal countries that expect things to fall into line with them, and that's not really the way the world works. And we have to appreciate all kinds of differences, and that means also, to some extent, conservative countries they have their traditions that need to be respected as well. It's a balancing act, and unfortunately, the conversation becomes quite tribal and quite binary quite quickly. And I like the fact that we have this medium to talk about it, and I really appreciate you bringing that up. How do you measure success with your stories? You know, it sounds like you're putting a lot of stuff out there. So what's that telling you? What are you getting back from that?
Yeah, and I go back to my answer earlier. It depends on which level of maturity the company is right now. When we started, and again, we were still a smaller part of the region growing in 5 years ago, my metrics for stories would be, you know, it's as simple as, oh, I've got a lot of views, I got a lot of impressions, I got a lot of clicks. That's giving brand awareness, that's giving, you know, recognition to the company. I'm happy. But of course, as you continue to, as the company matures and you're more focused and more targeted with your, you know, how you can impact revenue with the company, stories that influence the pipeline, to stories that help, you know, compels the viewers to write a form or learn more.
Take an action.
Take an action. It compels them to do a call to action, and funnels through the whole marketing process, and it becomes a pipeline. And that's, I would think, typically most companies will be very happy in that certain maturity. For me personally, if you're going to ask me what's my measure of success, when I do customer stories, it's when the customer's happy. When the customer comes back to me and say, oh, you've done a great job, you've captured a brand so well, and you've seen a customer proactively promote the story you've created, that's golden.
So that's where you're really turning them into advocates.
Exactly.
Not just being in the video, but if they then take pride in the content you've created about them, and then they go on to share that, it's like you're creating this network of ambassadors.
Exactly, and customer experience is always important when you deal with customers, right? Even if that's not my role, but you want them to enjoy the process. You want them to feel proud, because some of them, it's probably their first time doing this kinds of things as well, and you want to be supportive. And I always like joke around with my customers, because sometimes, going back to your question, Glenn, what's your role as head of customer advocacy? I've never heard of that role. Like, oh, think of me as your talent manager. I'm your talent manager in Workday, and I get you some gigs and help, you know, give you some opportunities to share your story outside. And that's my goal. And my goal is to make you successful when you're doing this. And when you're successful doing this, I'm happy. I feel that that's my KPI, I would say, personal KPI, I would say.
And I got to tell you, as a small businessman myself, you know, with a couple of small businesses, I love it. It turns me on to see a big company shine its spotlight on a little company. You know, they are some of the companies. I know you do companies big and small, but when you've got a small company, you probably couldn't afford to make a beautiful video of their own, and you spend the money to make it sort of for and with them. Yeah. Just as I would look at your stuff on that basis, I just love. That means a lot to me as a small businessman. We appreciate that, because we're fighting for space out there to be noticed. That's why I'm doing this podcast. You also made a good point about, I don't want to turn this into an advert for Click to View. I have history with Click to View. I know them very, very well, and they've been on. But when you're introducing a crew or a writer or whatever to your customer, you know, that's very precious. You're handing your customer off to this third party to take care of them. If you're just ringing up any random videographer, or, hey, you're free, can you get down here right now? You need to have that partnership, because they have to treat your customer the way you would treat your customer, and they have to respect the relationship you have there. And I think that's, I don't know why, but particularly with video, people tend to sort of requote and go and get 3 quotes from 3, you know, like every production company is just a random vendor. And I think, you know, working with an agency or a production company consistently, so they can learn your style, who your customers are, and you can trust that they're going to treat your customers as well as you would. Exactly. I think that's a really lovely thing to see.
Yeah, and I will always tell my when I work with Click2View, I've worked with them for quite a long time, and it's true with any other agencies that I work with. You are part of my team. I treat you as an extension of my team. So we talk the same language. We treat the same. We treat the same way our customers the same way. So I would give that brief and give that communicate as much as I can to whoever we're working with, so we are on the same page. Because I would always say I don't want to blame. Like, let's say something bad happens. Oh, it's done on my agency's fault. No, I don't want to do that. Whatever is their fault, it's my fault.
We're in
Because
it together.
because we're in this together. We're a team, and we're a family doing from the start and the end of our production.
Okay, it's enough free advertising for Click to View. It's my show. Got lots of love for those guys. So my last question for you, which I ask everybody, and you can answer this in your professional capacity or in a personal capacity, which is, what's the one story you've always wanted to tell and you've not yet had the opportunity or the chance or the time or the budget to?
Oh, I always work with customers, so that's going to be very, very common. If I get a privilege to write a story, I'm a serial killer fanatic.
Oh, I'm so
not a
glad you
serial
put
killer.
fanatic on the end of that. I was thinking, where's the nearest exit? Okay, you're a serial killer fanatic.
I love crime stories. I love getting to know, processes of what's tickling their mind, and trivia for you too. Before I was doing this, I used to be a nurse and a mental health nurse, and that's why
I did know that. We haven't even touched that. Yeah.
I love how the mind works. So maybe if I get a story to, write a story for a serial killer or a notorious killer, that would be great. I would love to cover and do that. From another side, for me, as just as a wish, I'd love to write a Disney story or create a Disney story featuring a transgender woman, as first Disney transgender princess. Because why not?
Why not? Indeed, I'm sure it's got to be in the works. I'm pretty certain it's got to be in the works somewhere.
I'd love to see that, and that'll be very cool to see.
Okay, cool. Well, if anyone from Disney's watching, the idea is here. It's waiting to be made. That was brilliant. Thank you very, very much indeed. I really appreciate it.
You're most welcome. Thank you. It was nice chatting with you, Neil. Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching or indeed listening to The Business of Storytelling with me, Neil Moore of Moore's Law Media. Did I mention that yet? That's my company. We help people and organizations tell better stories for business impact. And sometimes that means we make videos. And you know what we do with them? We use Vimeo to turn them into all kinds of other assets and to translate them and subtitle them and resize them for social media, because Vimeo is the platform to make, manage and share amazing videos at vimeo.com. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe, share, comment, complain. I don't mind as long as I'm getting my engagement metrics. And make sure you look out for plenty more podcasts about storytelling from the business of storytelling.